All right, buying Gold Coast. Here we are. We're actually going to unpack a really key topic in today's marketplace. Multiple offer scenarios. I'm going to give 3 powerful strategies and tactics to help you win if you've come up against this. And as you would have heard in the preamble, come away with heartbreak. And as I said, the key with formal offers and multiple offer scenarios, and when that occurs in the marketplace, just remember, you're not always going to win. I just want to remove yourself from thinking you have to try and get every single property you enter into. There's a lot of factors which you should be mindful of in terms of what is true quantifiable value, where do you see value in the property? You don't just want to, you could literally win every property if you just overpaid for everything. So today's chat is around, I'll put it this way, it's around increasing the probability of you securing the property. And if we can come away after the next 10 minutes or so with you feeling more confident, empowered, and more likely in terms of your percent chances of obtaining it because of the knowledge you've got, well, that's an absolute win, and I'd feel super proud and privileged to be able to give that to you, the listener. So, as always as well, if you're getting value out of these episodes, please share it to someone out there. Leave a review on your honest thoughts. It really does help the show. So appreciate all the love as always. So what I'll do is I'll actually go through 3 in particular. So number 1, terms matter. Number 2, search slow, act fast. And number 3, stand out with certainty. So I'm actually going to unpack what those 3 mean. I think those 3 points are the key to increasing your chances of winning your next multiple offer scenario. But for anyone who doesn't know why or what a multiple offer scenario is, essentially it's, by law in Queensland, there's all different ways to buy property. There's auctions, private treaty, there's off-market, on-market, pre-market, all those sorts of things. But with multiple offers, it's essentially where 2 or more buyers are interested in the same property and they want to submit offers on the same property. Sometimes multiple offer can be between, as I said, 2 people, can be 5, can be 10. Some instances on the Gold Coast and some of the hot suburbs, you're seeing multiple offers. Scenarios pop up with 15, 20 buyers, which is crazy. I heard there was one, I think it was in the suburb of Eleanor down the southern end, and it had 32 offers formally after the first open home or something, which is absolutely crazy. So these kind of scenarios happen typically in your kind of high demand, low supply location. So on the Gold Coast right now, we've all heard of your blue chip suburbs, but it's happening more and more in suburbs you least expect. So what I mean is even the central Gold Coast, I know even Nerang, Carrara, some of those pockets are experiencing high flow of multiple offer scenarios. Northern Gold Coast, extremely, extremely hot at the moment. So again, multiple offer scenarios are popping up all the time, and a lot of your key beachside suburbs too, where the properties are still relatively well affordable. Multiple offer scenarios are coming in the droves. I'm talking 10, 20 people as mentioned. So it's fueled by, fear of missing out. It's fueled by people, creating urgency in their mind that they need it as well, and which a lot of the times is a good agent's job to create that. And a lot of it too is also a bit of a transparency factor. A lot of people say they're very ill transparent. At the end of the day, it is what it is. You got to be able to do what you're given and the cards you're given on the table. So that's what I mean. Today is all around not so much being able to control what the scenario is, whether it's auction, whether you feel it's transparent or not. Today's really around, if you're presented with this scenario, how can we increase our chances of success? So, and by the way, agents are legally required to disclose when there are multiple offers in there. Usually there's a multiple offer form and things like that. So just a little FYI as well. Not all details agents have to share, and hence why people feel it's ill transparent. At the end of the day, they are trying to work for the seller. So I'm just trying to highlight, the rules and obligations of the parties involved in a real estate transaction in Queensland. So, and I had some stats here as well. year on year, like the Gold Coast is pushing up close to, anywhere from 7.2 to 11.2 was the rough data. Again, that's why I say I put a range, is because that's, units, houses, things like that. But the magnitude and the long story of it, the short story of it is prices are going up. And we're going to continue to see multiple offer scenarios more and more as this market continues to rise. So what we want to do, we want to be able to best position ourselves. So let's go through tip number one. As I said, we'll go through number one, terms matter. We'll go through search slow, act fast, and we'll go through stand out with certainty. So first one, terms matter. So number one is being finance ready, of course. So obtaining finance, making sure you've spoken to the broker before you've even started looking. That way you can potentially increase the likelihood of success by having a shorter finance clause. Have you spoken to the broker around the possibility of removing a finance clause? So there's some people right now, even though they may not be somewhat a cash buyer, you can actually chat to your broker around the scenario of being able to remove the finance clause. And this happens a lot when, either someone's sold and it's just a minor little top-up loan, or it's just like a subject to evaluation and things like that. They can run scenarios where, look, if the valuation was definitely going to be above this, which in some cases, we've had instances we've given this advice to people and they've spoken to the broker and they're like, it's absolutely impossible that it would go below that. So they felt super confident to wipe the finance clause. And I kid you not, sometimes that is the difference. Just either having a really short finance clause or no finance clause is the difference in a multiple offer scenario. So terms do matter. So within terms, as I said, there's finance. Settlement terms are a huge one too. Obviously, understanding what the seller's circumstance is prior to entering the negotiation. So first thing I'd be asking, if you were keen on the property, what are the key settlement terms that would suit the seller? You could ask that to Mr. and Mrs. Agent straight away. And they may say, look, ideally they want 30 days, ideally they want 60 days. Use that to your advantage. Use that if you can obtain and be a bit more flexible as a buyer to appealing to the terms of the other side. Again, you may be able to, from past experience, like we've had many transactions with clients where we were able to get it over the line for the client, where we may not have been the best price, but we had the most attractive settlement terms. Because you got to remember, some people out there have got a property that they like, it settles by this date and, they need the funds for that. Or, ideally they want a longer settlement because they haven't found anything yet. There's even a nice little pro tip I can give you, things like the lease-back clause. We've used that a fair few times as well. A lot of people don't know about it, and it is extremely effective. Sometimes when I understand through creative question asking and our team knowing these questions too, we obtain information. For example, the seller has nowhere to go. They're obviously keen to sell, but they're a bit anxious on moving. So you could clearly state to the agent, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, would your client be open to a lease-back clause, at fair market value for, say, 3 months or 6 months? So it gives them assurance that they're staying in the property. We've had some where they've done that for just 30 days and they've found something and they move out. So again, everything is negotiable and you can play around with the terms more than you think. The next one is a huge one. The search slow, act fast mentality. So search slow, act fast. What I mean by that is you have to move fast when the time comes. So when I say search slow, I mean get all your ducks lined up, like know what your due diligence protocols are. Wait for the right opportunity. I see so many people just, when a multiple offer scenario comes up, they just rush into it and they're not sure if it's the right property because they haven't spent the time searching slow. So in order to search slow, you should be what I mean by that is you should kind of research slow and move with a pace where you kind of, if something sells and it's not really a surprise to you, you're at a good level. You know where the market is at in terms of pricing. If you're knowing why one pocket's cheaper than the other, you're at a good pace. You can kind of search slow then. If you're understanding that, this type of dwelling in this location sells somewhat for this versus, this type of dwelling in that location and that postcode sells for this, again, you're probably in a good place where you can search slow. So what I mean is things pop up online, or if you get access to off market, that's great, but you're in an ability and a flow state where you can spot opportunities to a point where you can then act quickly. So you've researched slow, you've spent time understanding the market, you've spent time building the necessary connections you needed in the marketplace you want, and you can look in a nice flow state and search slow. As soon as you see something pop up and you think, hey, that's good value on where it's at now, I'm moving at pace. So sometimes, if you have the ability to get off market, and this is, as a buyer's agency, our company, I think last year was around 64% of our deals were off market, which we're grateful for. So it did limit the competition. But if you don't have access to off markets, or you're not using a Gold Coast buyer's agent, likelihood of you coming up against other buyers is pretty high. And that's okay. You may enter into what's called, again, a multiple offer scenario. So you've searched slow, you've seen a property you like, you say, bang, I like that, and you act fast. In the act fast stage, this is where you can win. Some buyers take so long to not only get the contracts reviewed, they take ages and they waste the agent's time on, trying to fill it out. Their conveyancer isn't available for 3 days. They're asking questions around, is this a flood zone? Is this not a flood zone? If you can limit all of those kind of delays, you will dramatically increase your probability of securing a property during a multiple offer scenario. So if you see a property that, quantify value, search slow, act fast, bang, you want the offer. You've already got your team reviewing the contracts and they're reliable, so they're back to you quickly. You already know all of your due diligence checklist and you've gone through it very quickly. You've got all the links already saved. You've got the key, whether it's town planners or people at council, you've got all your connections ready to go in your back pocket, and you can call them in an instant and get the clarification you need. You can then go on to a formal contract with a strong and fair offer because you already know what strong value is. And I'm telling you, that speed at which you move is sometimes the difference between you and another buyer. Every day of the week, it definitely works. Little pro tip on that one as well. I always like to say, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, and this is what our team does very, very well, is we like to get these offers on formal contracts, not letters of offers. And the reason's this: a lot of people don't actually know the difference between the two. And one holds a lot more weight than the other. So a formal offer holds if you're signing a formal offer, like an REIQ contract versus just, what they call a letter of offer, the formal offer is essentially you're an initial away from owning the property. So my recommendation is, if you've searched slow, you've acted fast, you've been able to get all your key contacts and due diligence checked off and it's a green light, I'd be going straight to a formal contract. I'd be asking the agent, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, can I fill this out on a formal contract? 9 times out of 10, multiple offer scenario, they will give it to you and you'll have to sign the, multiple offer form and things like that. If you can get that back quickly, clean, and again, point 1, with clean terms, again, you're just gonna increase your chances dramatically of owning this property you want. So point 2 is a huge one. Search slow, but act really, really fast. And then the third one is stand out with certainty. So stand out with certainty. I really like this one because essentially what it is in the mass pool of buyers out there with property and multiple offer scenario, plenty of different buyers out there, what's making you stand out versus the other buyers, to the agent. So point 1, you've got your good terms matter. Point 2, you're acting with speed. Point 3, stand out with certainty. Some little key pro tips there. I got here, make the agent's job easy, clear communication, follow-ups, letting them know where you're at with things is huge. Is there any admin burden you can take off the agent? Maybe you can say, I'll look after the DocuSign, I'll fill it all in. Anything like that will just, again, make you stand out. Build rapport with the person you're trying to associate with. You wouldn't believe how many agents I've spoken to say they've actually gone with the buyer who was just the most respectful, and we liked their vibe. We were willing, we felt a lot more confident in them as a buyer versus someone else who was maybe rude and cold and didn't get back to their calls. That's a huge one. A buyer who is ready to go often looks more solid than a buyer who's, non-responsive. So again, do not underestimate how much just standing above the crowd in a multiple offer scenario helps you as a buyer. And probably the big one of all of that too is when you're standing out, I say frequency builds trust. So the amount of touch points you do with the agent, the amounts of, administrative burden you can potentially take away, the quality of your conversations and the tonality in which you're asking questions. There's a playful and cheerful tone versus a direct and bossy tone. I'm telling you one thing, in a multiple offer scenario, the little things matter. Those sorts of things go a long way to, again, increasing your chances of winning your next multiple offer scenario. So if you can stand out with certainty, and the more certain you can present yourself to the agent, it's only going to make the agent's job easier to represent your offer when he or she puts out all the offers on the table and the seller says to the agent, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, look, these 2 or 3 or 4, they're really similar on price. Which one do you feel is the most solid buyer? That is what's going to get these sorts of properties over the line. And if you're someone right now who's potentially missing out continuously in multiple offer scenarios, maybe it's one of these 3 things, or maybe it's all 3 of these things you need to improve. So hopefully those 3 key tips help. And I just had one last thing to finish on. Just psychological edge. Don't underestimate the power in understanding, human psychology, building rapport, tonality, things like that. That goes a long way. Strategic silence. Sometimes, as I said before, all your follow-ups are good and things like that. Sometimes if they keep trying to push you up and come back with price, sometimes, not showing your cards too strong actually can help as well. So just being strategic with how you pinpoint that, and also understanding this as well as one last pro tip. Just like agents will play off other buyers against you in multiple offer scenarios, you can also play off, agents by having other properties in your back pocket too. So don't always throw all your eggs in one basket with property. It's good to have a pipeline of properties, so you feel a lot more confident and give off that feeling too of, yes, I want the property. Yes, I put strong terms in. But at the end of the day, if I don't hear a response by this time, look, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, you can let the seller know that, unfortunately, I'm going to property, over here in Smith Street instead of your one on James Street or whatever it is. So again, it's just having that seriousness and intention around the whole scenario with multiple offers. So one last thing I wrote here too was approximately 1 in 3 homes. So this is a stat actually from Domain Insights in 2024. 1 in 3 homes in the coastal suburbs right now are going through a multiple offer scenario. So these will happen more and more as well. Days on market for high demand suburbs is under 20 days. So again, why I say speed is sometimes the answer, and having those terms and having all that ready to go is key. And then lastly, just at the end of the day, I always say this, there's property everywhere. There's property out there. Like, I know sometimes when you miss out on a property, it can hurt, and you know, it can set you back for some people for days, some people for weeks. I've seen people sit out of the market because they were so, I guess, emotionally attached to a property, and they missed out. I truly, truly believe, after not only my own personal journey of going through multiple property transactions, our company securing hundreds, if not thousands of properties on the Gold Coast right now, what I can tell you is this: every closed door leads you closer to the door that's meant to stay open for you or your family. So if you can increase your chances of winning in your next multiple offer scenario, that's great. If you don't get the property, just remember that quote, because it always, always will work out in the end. So let me know your thoughts. Hopefully those 3 key tips for winning your next multiple offer scenario helps. Terms matter. Search slow, act fast, and stand out with certainty. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, thanks for tuning in to Buying Gold Coast.